One quiet night, Abu Rashid's family lived in a beautiful, quiet house in a quiet neighborhood. Abu Rashid was a good man who loved his family and worked hard to provide them with a decent life. While Rashid was a caring woman who took care of her home and her 3 children with love. Their life was very normal, filled with laughter and happy times, until that day when everything changed. Rashid, the eldest son, was a curious young man who loved science and knowledge. Sometimes he would sit in the backyard of the house reading books for long hours, enjoying the tranquility and beauty of nature around him. One day, he decided to help his mother plant some flowers in the garden, and while he was digging in the ground, his hand bumped into something solid. Rashid was surprised, and removed the dirt to discover an old wooden box, covered with a thick layer of dirt, as if it had been buried for many years. Chapter 1: Discovering the Book. Rashid looked at the box carefully, and began to open it. The box was small and tightly closed. After some effort, he managed to open it, and found inside it an old book with a torn leather cover, and stains on it as if it was very old. The pages of the book were worn out, filled with strange symbols and talismans. Rashid felt surprised, and felt a strange feeling, as if the book was calling him to open it and read from it. On the cover of the book was written in small but clear handwriting, "The Enchanted Book." Rashid had never heard of this book before, but his curiosity prompted him to browse through it. He opened the book slowly, and began to read some of the phrases and talismans written, and he was trying to understand their meanings. Despite their strangeness. As time passed, Rashid felt a heaviness in his head, and the colors of things around him changed, as if the world had become blurry. Chapter 2: The Beginning of Changes. Rashid returned home that night as if something had changed in him. He was more silent than usual, and he no longer laughed or talked to his brothers as usual. His looks were strange, and his eyes seemed to be devoid of life. His mother began to notice this change, and asked him if he was okay, but he replied in a cold voice that he was a little tired. As the days passed, strange things started happening in the house. The family members would hear faint whispers coming from Rashid's room. And sometimes they would hear the sound of footsteps moving inside the house at night. As for Rashid, he seemed like a different person, spending long hours in his room and locking the door behind him. Chapter 3: Changes in Rashid's Personality. With time, Rashid's behavior started to become more strange. He would get angry quickly, and raise his voice at his brothers for no apparent reason. His skin was pale, and his eyes were getting darker every day. Even his food, he no longer ate as he used to. In fact, he barely ate anything. One day, his mother heard Rashid's voice speaking in a strange voice as if he was talking to someone inside his room. She went in and asked him if he needed help, but he shouted at her and asked her to leave him alone. This was the first time the poor mother screamed in fear, as she felt that this was not the Rashid she knew. Chapter 4: Scary Nights. The nights at home turned into a real nightmare. The whole family began to hear strange, inexplicable sounds, as if there were creatures moving in the house at night. One night, the father woke up to the sound of Rashid's screams, so he ran to his room to find him sitting in the corner of the room, shaking his body back and forth, and repeating mysterious words in a language he had never heard before. The family felt real terror. What happened to Rashid? And how did he become like this? The father and mother tried to talk to him, but he was looking at them with bulging eyes, as if he did not know them. At that moment, the family began to realize that Rashid might be under the influence of something supernatural. Chapter 5: Rashid's Confrontation with the Jinn. One night, Rashid woke up from his sleep to find a strange creature standing at his feet, his features unclear, but he felt his presence. The shadow was speaking in a low voice, telling him that he was an ancient jinn, and that he had entered his body when he opened the enchanted book. The genie was asking Rashid to obey him and do strange things. Rashid felt scared and terrified, but he was unable to escape or scream. As the genie had taken control of his entire body. Chapter 6: Searching for a Solution. After Rashid's condition worsened and there was no solution left, the family decided to seek help from a sheikh known for his ability to treat such cases. The mother told the story to the sheikh, who seemed understanding and told them that this kind of thing requires patience and strength. The sheikh agreed to visit the house and took the necessary protection measures with them. Chapter 7: The First Treatment Session. The sheikh began the legal ruqya session, reciting verses from the Holy Quran to Rashid, while the family members stood around him with fearful hearts. Suddenly, Rashid began to shake and scream in a voice other than his own, as if there was a being inside him resisting. The genie was trying to scare the sheikh by showing his strength, but the sheikh continued to recite the verses. Chapter 8: Resisting the Genie. The genie began to appear more, threatening the sheikh and the family that they would pay the price for their interference. He tried to scare the family, as things in the house started moving randomly, and items fell from the shelves. She held her children's hands while crying, but the sheikh was steadfast and did not stop reading, until the genie's resistance gradually weakened. Chapter 9: The Final Confrontation. The sheikh continued his recitation with increasing intensity of the verses, and asked the genie to leave Rashid's body immediately. After hours of struggle, the genie began screaming that he had been imprisoned in the book for hundreds of years, and that he had been promised freedom but would not find it now. As the sheikh recited the last verses, the genie screamed and finally left Rashid's body, leaving him to collapse on the ground exhausted but safe. Chapter 10: Return to Normal Life. After that terrifying experience, Rashid gradually recovered and began to regain consciousness and health. Life returned to normal, but the family never forgot those terrifying nights. They buried the enchanted book again in a place far from the house, so that no one would find the book and be swept away to a similar fate.